So Kevin O'Leary is a host on that flop of a show, Shark Tank, which is a CNBC TV series. Now that should instantly be a red flag knowing that Kevin O'Leary works for CNBC. That is pretty much instant proof that he is a con artist, because anyone who knows anything about CNBC knows how untruthful they are and how they will advertise the most worthless trash on their network, such as Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency, so long as their advertisers pay for it. They sell out to the highest bidder and they disregard the fact that their advertising pump and dumps could financially ruin people. So Kevin O'Leary, while he gets free mainstream media clout on CNBC, what the network does is they lie to their audience and they praise this guy as a big-time businessman. But what they forget to tell people is how this fraud actually made all of his money. And that is why the guy who gave himself the nickname Mr. Wonderful needs to be exposed. Now, apart from his corny nickname, let's look at a few other things that he said about himself before we dissect his shady business dealings and how he made all of his money. So he describes himself as a wine connoisseur and a TV celebrity. He also likes to call himself a ruthless capitalist and a loan shark, because he says that one of the best ways to make money is to give out high interest loans. And he also likes to tout how amazing his business skills are, and as long as his co-host Mark Cuban isn't on the panel during a Shark Tank episode, Kevin O'Leary tries to make himself appear as a billionaire. Now, I'm not the first one to call him out on this blatant lie, but he often makes the distinction on the show when he's competing with offers from these other sharks that are on the panel. He loves to point out that he is the only one on the panel who has made a $1 billion exit from his company. Now, by making such ridiculous claims, first of all, he's stroking his own ego, but the audience, well, they only heard him say $1 billion exit from my company. And they think, wow, this guy must know his stuff. He's a billionaire. Well, unfortunately for Mr. Not Wonderful, I've made this video to expose his lies. So, what does he mean when he says $1 billion exit? Well, let's dig up some of his business history. So after a short stint as a wannabe TV producer, it was obvious that he was horrible at the job, but one thing he did learn was that a well-directed video could convince just about anybody to buy into whatever he is trying to sell, because this was a time when there was no internet, so nobody could fact check him. And I guess to his credit, he could see something brewing as the personal computer industry was on the rise. So what he did is he asked some of his friends that he worked with during his film producer attempts if they could make a convincing video pumping up his new venture into the craze which was personal computers. He saw all the hype surrounding Microsoft and Apple, and he wanted a piece of the action. And being the self-proclaimed ruthless capitalist that he portrays himself to be, he managed to convince computer engineers to rip off certain aspects of software that was on the market at the time. This was during the 1980s. And with investors' money, he started a company called SoftKey Software. Now, to put it simply, this was horrible software and the company was on the verge of collapse. Shareholders were pulling their money out, but then Kevin O'Leary got lucky. The popularity of the internet exploded. The internet and anything related to personal computers in the early 1990s went through the roof. It was what we now know as the dot-com bubble. Unprofitable companies had market capitalizations into the billions, but SoftKey was still considered to be lower grade good-for-nothing software. So in order to keep shareholders happy, SoftKey acquired a different software company named The Learning Company, which SoftKey then adopted the name because SoftKey was known amongst software experts to be trash. So by changing the name from SoftKey to The Learning Company, that can hide the bad reputation that SoftKey was known to have. Now remember, this was at the height of the dot-com bubble. Money was flowing flowing in from ignorant investors who had no idea what they were investing in. It's the same thing that's happening today with cryptocurrency. It is a huge bubble and people are gambling on a long shot hoping that they will get rich. And due to the dot-com bubble and at its very peak, after years of being unprofitable, Kevin O'Leary managed to sell the learning company for a premium, and this is where we see Mr. Not Wonderful for the fraud that he is. So the learning company, or SoftKey, whatever you want to call it, well, it eventually failed miserably. So the company was acquired by Mattel for $4.2 billion, and that acquisition was so bad that it actually lost $3 billion worth of shareholders' money in one day during the dot-com crash. And as you'd expect, this prompted multiple class action lawsuits against Mattel that were eventually settled for hundreds of millions of dollars just a couple years after the acquisition. Businessweek magazine described this as one of the worst deals of all time. Can you imagine that? Imagine being this gimp who likes to say things like, I want to take this startup out back and shoot it, to the small-time entrepreneurs who pitched their business on that flop of a show, Shark Tank, while he himself is considered to have started the worst software company of all time. He's such a gimp. The learning company, or SoftKey, was a complete disaster, and guess who benefited from that horrible deal? Yes, you guessed it, it was Mr. Not Wonderful himself, Kevin O'Leary. So that is what he means when he talks about a billion-dollar exit from his company. He pumped up his worthless company, then he exited with shareholders' money. So for him to have the audacity to walk around like he is Mr. Wonderful is rather pathetic. He's jet-setting around off the backs of shareholders who lost billions. Now the truth is, if you were dumb enough to invest into the learning company, then you deserve to lose all of your money, because it's not hard to see that Kevin O'Leary is an absolute con artist. Don't listen to anything he says. His business history speaks for itself, and he's constantly getting called out for his lies. Here is a magazine cover that I found where he states, I'm not a billionaire, but I play one on TV. And here's one of his quotes that I found to get an idea of his character. It states, business is war. I go out there, I want to kill the competitors. I want to make their lives miserable. I want to steal their market share. I want them to fear me. And I want everyone on my team thinking that we're going to win. Okay, LOL. That is the most corny and pathetic thing that I have ever heard. This guy is overcompensating for his insecurities, because you never hear real deal investors like Warren Buffett saying things like that. Only Kevin the corn dog liar is that corny. But it gets even more shady with Kevin O'Leary, because no one can pin a true estimate on his net worth. No one knows exactly how much his cut was after he sold the miserable learning company. The company had no real value, which is why it's now obsolete. But Google says his net worth is somewhere around $400 million. But no one really knows, because remember, he's on a magazine cover saying that he's not a billionaire, but he plays one on TV. He is a fraud. But you know, this is classic mainstream media stuff, and it's exactly why we should not trust them. CNBC didn't hire corndog Kevin for his business skills, because Businessweek magazine considered the acquisition of his company to be one of the worst deals of all time. CNBC hired him because he's an actor, someone who is happy to spew out whatever lies he needs to so that he can scam CNBC viewers and shareholders of his ventures out of their money.